There once was a happy family that lived among the green, rolling foothills of the Appalachian Mountains of Pennsylvania in a small cottage tucked on the outskirts of a humble town. The family's cottage would have been otherwise unremarkable were it not for the most magnificent garden surrounding their house. The garden was filled with beautiful flowers and succulent vegetables. Begonias, petunias, lilies, pansies, and daffodils on one side, while stakes of tomato vines, cucumbers, peas, carrots, and neat rows of lettuce heads dotted the other. The mother of the family believed fiercely in being self-sufficient, and so she tended as lovingly to her garden as she did to her 3 beautiful children, so that she might raise them on healthy homemade salads and soups made with the vegetables harvested from the garden. While the children would play in the garden, the mother would walk to and from the well behind the house, carrying bucket after bucket of water for her plants to grow. She would hoe and dig areas for new plants to be seeded, while weeding the plants still alive from previous years and fertilizing them to help them maximize their yield. In all, the mother spent so much time tending to the garden and the children playing outside that it appeared the family practically lived in the garden, not the small house beside it. However, the children didn't play in the vegetables, so as not to undo all the hard work their mother did, instead opting to spend time running between the rows of beautiful flowers and hanging from the most impressive flowering tree in the center of the garden. The tree was, in their mother's opinion, the entire reason for the success of the garden and the reason why she initially planted her entire garden around it. The tree was an eastern redbud, named for its incredible display of red-pink blossoms it produces every spring. This eastern redbud had been living outside the family house since before the children were born, and it was prized among all the beautiful plants of the mother's garden. She had inherited the tree in its prime, as it had been planted on the property long before even she had arrived. This redbud was easily over 60 feet tall, and had the most perfect branches for her kids to hang from. What's more, in the spring, it would attract all of the best pollinators to her garden, as it seemed nothing could resist the magnificent splendor of the tree when it was fully in bloom. In particular, one year the tree attracted the most elegant female ruby-throated hummingbird. The redbud was the perfect match for this young, sprightly hummingbird, as it provided endless nectar for her in the spring from its blossoms, and its strong branches were the perfect site for her to nest, offering unmatched shelter and comfort from that of the surrounding world. After the hummingbird nested her first year, she never looked back. It was, as true as anyone could tell, a match made in heaven. For while the tree provided protection and nectar, the hummingbird, as the mother well knew, was among the best pollinators. When the hummingbird would dart back and forth among the flowers of the tree and her garden, she would collect pollen on her bill and wings, some might argue even better than the bees. However, unbeknownst to the mother and her children, was the incredible depth of the tree and the hummingbird's love for both the garden and the family. The redbud tree and the hummingbird were a team, and it brought them great joy each year to pollinate the garden and watch as its beauty brought smiles to the faces of the children and the mother. The redbud tree watched silently, a perfect age sentinel of wisdom and strength, as even when the children grew, they would still climb up onto its branches. From time to time, the mother would even sit on one of the lower boughs and watch as her children scaled the tree much higher above her. Over the years, it felt as if the tree became a symbol of the heart and soul of the small family. The hummingbird also had long been discovered by the family and was eagerly anticipated each year when it returned from its winter migration. When it darted back and forth among the flowers of the garden, the children would laugh and point in delight at its cute personality and energetic spirit. If the tree was the heart and soul of the family, the hummingbird had become its most beloved mascot and friend, a tiny yet powerful cheerleader for the garden's success and the family's happiness. The years passed, and it seemed as if nothing could ever end or change this beautiful, happy life. The small family thrived together beneath the ever-watchful gaze of the hummingbird and the redbud tree in their beloved garden. One year, however, something did change. The tree waited patiently for the hummingbird to return from its migration, making sure its blossoms would help provide both adequate scent and a visual guide for the small female bird to make her way home. That spring, however, the hummingbird never made her way home, though the redbud tree waited constantly for her return from her winter migration. Initially, it did not doubt she would return and nest in its branches again. As the months passed, confusion turned to sorrow, and the tree remained empty. The beloved aged tree longed daily for its companion, the hummingbird. Perhaps from a broken soul, the tree which had so long been the heart of the garden developed a terrible disease and started to wither away. Unfortunately, the mother had sorrows of her own. The next winter nearly passed, and her last child was preparing to leave home, having grown into a man. When the day came for him to leave, she hugged him in the doorway, knowing the small cottage, which had once been home to so much love and laughter, would soon remain silent. As her youngest child left home, walking down the trail away from the cottage, the mother collapsed onto her knees. As the tears came, she decided to seek refuge once again in the welcoming boughs of her prized redbud tree. She lovingly placed her hand on the bark of the tree and cried until she had no more tears. Then with a heavy breath, she said aloud, "Dear redbud tree, you have known my family the longest and seen us grow together. Why must things ever change, and why must we grow old?" She looked sorrowfully at the tree, who gave no reply, and continued, "And now look, you yourself are sick. I doubt you will blossom again this spring. It seems things will never be as they were." With a sigh, the mother returned back into the now empty house. More time passed, and it became clear that the mother was not coping well with her solitude. The garden, which had always been tended by her loving hands, was left alone. She no longer cared to do her chores, and the garden sprouted weeds as it became spring, and it started to fall into disarray. Watching this, the redbud tree became deeply troubled, and despite his own pain, found within himself a desire to make the woman happy, even if it was dying itself. It could not bear to see the woman upset, and letting the garden go to waste seemed unthinkable. In the midst of its quiet contemplation, a single monarch butterfly alighted on the limb of the tree exactly where the mother had been seated before. The monarch butterfly was a sensitive, magnificent creature, known for its incredible empathy and kindness. As soon as it alighted, it could sense the redbud's sorrow, and the butterfly asked quietly, "What is wrong, my dear ancient friend?" The tree remained silent, but the butterfly could feel his reply. He could feel the tree's longing for his companion and his sorrow over watching the woman being left alone. The monarch butterfly flitted his wings in recognition of such intense sorrow and replied, "I see, you miss your companion, and the woman who lives in the cottage has sorrows of her own which troubles you. Well, my friend, be not afraid, for I have just migrated north from Mexico, and I have met your hummingbird. In fact," the monarch said with a twinkle in his eyes, "she and I are great friends." The tree felt a sudden wave of surprise and confusion. How could this be possible? "You see," the monarch continued, "the place where I come from is perfectly warm and pleasant all year, and she now lives there with me. She speaks of you daily and misses you more than you know." The tree felt a sudden warmth inside and listened closely, somehow knowing the monarch would not lie. "The place where she and I now live you too can come. In fact, I am confident we will all be together soon. The monarch butterfly then noticed a large upper limb on the tree, which had started to wither and die. Seeing the signs of disease clearly evident in the tree, the monarch continued, "You are dying, yet I feel inside you a spark more powerful than any disease." The monarch then paused, noticing the once beautiful garden which was left unattended. "They don't call me the monarch without reason," he mused. And looking up at the vast expanse of the mighty tree before him, he continued confidently, "I can help you." The tree again felt a wave of confusion wash over him. The monarch quietly said, without hesitation, "She misses you, and asked for me to help. That is why I have flown 3,000 miles to be here with you right now." The tree felt once again the warmth inside its very core. "Since she is not here to help you, I will pollinate your blossoms this year in her absence, and we will bring new life to not only you, but to the woman's whole garden." The monarch nodded his antenna knowingly before adding, "With my help, you all will find peace and new life in ways you could never have anticipated or expected. In truth, we will help this poor mother smile again like she never has before." The monarch happily flitted his wings. "You are capable even now of more than you ever imagined. Now, let's get to work." At these words, the tree felt strength wash through it, and although it had yet to blossom this spring, it knew it would blossom one final, magnificent time. Over the coming days, the tree blossomed, and it blossomed in ways it never had before. Among the rarest of conditions and the rarest of trees in the northern United States is a phenomenon known as cauliflory. The redbud tree, on occasion, can sprout blossoms along its very trunk and bark. It is one of the most beautiful rarities of horticulture within temperate climates. With the encouragement of the monarch and the warmth his words had caused in its core, the tree found new life and did the impossible. It sprouted blossoms along its branches, along its trunk, and lit up the entire garden in shades of red and pink. Its musty fragrance could be smelled on the entire property. It was then that the woman emerged for the first time in days into her garden. In her depression, she hadn't set foot outside the house. But that morning she awoke and her house was bathed in cerise pink, and she smelled the fragrance of her beloved tree. As she stepped out the door, the sight which greeted her left her breathless. The tree had blossomed as never before, and she stood shocked in the doorway, for she had believed the tree's disease would soon overpower it, and was unprepared for the sudden revival. The tree watched proudly and intently, waiting to see the woman's reaction. To his surprise and confusion, the woman let a single tear run down her cheek. Wasn't the transformation supposed to help the woman smile? Why was she crying? However, the woman walked slowly towards the tree, and as she did so, the largest smile lit up the woman's face. She stepped as if into a fairy tale, into the welcoming pink and red boughs of the tree, and sat gently on her favorite branch. The monarch, from a much higher up position, nodded in approval, but whispered quietly, "My work here has only just begun." And with that, he took off and started pollinating one sweet flower after another. The tree acted like a giant beacon due to its sheer number of blossoms. It lit up the entire area. This attracted more pollinators, and according to the monarch's plan, the garden once again came to life. Because of the butterfly's help, that year, even without the woman exerting herself, the garden flourished and produced more fruit than she would have ever thought possible. What's more, the tree was pollinated so well that it grew almost an innumerable number of seed pods. Unbeknownst to the woman, exactly 3 of these seed pods, the same number as her departed children, fell on the fertile soil of the garden below and took root. the following year came and went, and the disease which had started to take hold of the old tree finally ran its course. However, before it died, in the final year of its life, it developed a more special bond with a woman than it ever had before. The woman found ever greater solace in sitting in the nook of its lower bough, and spent many times throughout the upcoming months there, contemplating the miracle of her garden that year and what it meant to her. And so, the monarch had ensured the old tree would not spend its last year alone, the woman faithfully tending to its side after the happiness it had provided her so unexpectedly during one of her most difficult times. At the close of our story, the monarch butterfly flew back to his tropical paradise satisfied, for he knew more than anyone the importance and significance of change, being a living witness to the possibility of new life. And thus it is said about butterflies, if nothing ever changed, we'd have no butterflies.